There are the flags. El Salvador, Colombia, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, United States, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Australia, Canada, El Salvador, I already said, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Argentina, Venezuela, Honduras, Dominican Republic, I already said Costa Rica. Don't stop that applause. There we go, there we go, there we go. Nicaragua. Transmitting live. Look, 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 look. Read all the people from around the world. Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia. Receiving us now, live. How beautiful, people. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Here from Broadway Street. From Anaheim, California. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. May God bless you. I greet you in this way because people are watching from different time zones, especially if you're in Europe or Asia. People follow us. They've been waiting for our live transmission. May God bless you. It's a pleasure to connect with you. Here we've already sang, we've worshipped, we've gone through so many spiritual emotions, and also the other ones, living through this experience, but this is the moment in which we connect with the rest of the world and with the rest of the planet that is now awaiting us. It's marvelous. Thank you for being there. Before I transmit to you what I believe God placed in my heart, I'm going to tell you in just a few minutes that last week we went to the other coast. I don't take anything for granted because there are people from other countries. We're on the west coast. We went to the east coast, more specifically to Florida, to Miami, and in Miami there's a city called Hialeah where people are literally living on the streets. They're living in inhumane conditions. I know for the rest of the world you're all saying, oh, come on, it's the United States. But in the United States, money doesn't grow on the toilet paper rolls. When you're in this country, those of us that are here, we know that it's an extremely capitalistic country, so there is no way to steal gas or electricity or live without paying rent or live off of just side jobs here and there. No, the system here works in such a way that if you lose your job, you lose your health insurance. The system itself tends to eject those that have less. However, not just because of that are we going to discriminate them. And there are many people that need help. And in Miami, I have a friend that we met when I was just 19 years old, so long, long time ago. Your grandmother. No, I mean your grandmother would be very happy with your education. This gentleman, who was my mentor many years ago, his name is Ruben Jimenez. His children, for those that would like to know this trivia, his children are in a band called Montreal. His son also makes viral videos on YouTube, Juan de Montreal. And so this couple has served for a long time, and they have the AFA Center. And so for the first time ever, because we've never associated with anyone else, not out of prejudice or because we're picky, but just because when you don't associate with others, you have control over everything, right? Of where the money goes, of what is done, of the volunteer group. But in this case, we made an exception because they've already been doing work in Miami. What we did is we injected our finances in, and also an injection of personnel, because many of us went last week to Miami to support, and any information will appear on the screen on the live stream. It's centerafe.org, where people from all over the world, if you're saying, I'd like to collaborate the way you've done with River, you can do it. We know that we're not going to be able to reach over everything. That's why there's different ministries. So we want you to really bless Ruben Jimenez. This happened last week. A battalion from here went out. We gave a financial injection. It was an important amount. And these people will never forget that maybe we didn't resolve their lives, but we did give them a little bit of happiness. And obviously, we were able to tell them who that happiness is coming from. This is River in Miami.
Bueno, estamos muy felices de tener esta unión con River Church y el Centro AFE, ya que de otra manera no podíamos llegar a tantas familias. Nosotros estamos trabajando todos los días aquí, pero esto es un evento especial donde creemos que va a ser uno de los eventos más importantes en la ciudad de Miami, especialmente Hialeah, donde vamos a entregar muchísimas mochilas con útiles escolares y bolsas de alimentos muy nutridas, donde creemos que más de 1.200 familias van a ser ayudadas. Bueno, como un niño que estuvo esperando el regalito durante todo el año, así me siento, porque lo hemos soñado, hemos orado a Dios y Dios nos puso en el camino a ustedes y bueno, juntos podemos realizar este sueño de ver esta ciudad especialmente tan necesitada, poder ayudarles y darles tanto amor que le vamos a dar hoy.
Realmente lo necesitamos en estos tiempos que la economía está tan apretada y muchas gracias por lo que están haciendo.
Yo creo que es una bendición de Jesús venir acá y que esté tanta comida disponible y tantas útiles escolares, sí me hacía falta.
Muchas bendiciones y que sigan de verdad cosechando el cielo y que hayan demasiadas maravillas sobre su iglesia.
Y bueno, acá que tome a AFE como su base de operaciones en el sur de la Florida. Tiene todo aquí para que hagamos grandes cosas para muchísima gente que están sufriendo aquí en el sur de la Florida. Gracias por su apoyo.
That applause is for your seed, huh? Your seed, huh? Thank you for sowing. Because those of us that cannot travel, we can accompany them with our time. And, you know, we're paid for our time. So when we give a collaboration or some money, it's part of our time. 1 hour of our lives goes with them, or maybe half an hour or a day or whatever each person wants to sow. So thank you. And Ruben, it's a pleasure to know that there are people that are working with a lot of effort. It's not that he doesn't have River Arena behind him with the financial backing and the people. No, he does it through a lot of effort, and we send him a very special greeting. Remember to always pray for the beloved Ruben Jimenez, who's doing a marvelous job. I don't know if he was inspired by us, but man, is it great to be able to inspire people to give. It's better to give than to receive. Yes, always. Are we ready, people? Yes or no? Very well. Every time that I'm going to offer a message like this, I cannot take for granted the premise that we're all very different, all of us. I'm convinced that I am before a diaspora of cosmopolitan people, of eclectic people, a wide variety of people, and to that add all the people that are watching us from different parts of the globe. If you have children, you know that they can have the same genes, the same parents, the same family, the same environment, but each one has their own internal constitution, and they have a distinct emotional development. They're not all the same. We don't have children that are made in series, even though they look a lot alike, even if they were twins. In fact, even though children share the same biological parents, each one of those children has a unique relationship with their parents, and an individual experience, and of course subjective. Each child has different parents from their siblings, even though they're biological siblings. I didn't have the same parents as my brothers. We were 4 brothers, and we didn't have the same parents. Technically, yes, we did. But when my oldest brother shares with me how Dad was, I met another father, I don't know, maybe 30 years older with less patience, or maybe with more patience, because I got to them when they were already tired and more lenient. So parents change and evolve with each child, adjusting their style of raising them, their way of relating with each child. So everyone that interacts with people learns this. Soccer coaches know this. They know which are the players that work best with discipline, with punishment. You can never take your letter off the law with them, and those that need to be treated with silk gloves, because if they're disciplined, they don't work out. You have to speak to them differently, you have to speak softly. So coaches know that they cannot treat all the players the same way. Good salesmen know this as well. They know which clients want more conversation. I was once a salesman at a retail store, and a woman would come in, and I would think to myself, oh, she wants conversation. She's not going to buy. And sometimes a buyer wants more space and privacy. They're saying, I'm just looking. And maybe they're the one that ends up buying from you, but the other person has had their tongue in a knot for a few hours, and they want to let it loose for a few minutes. Therapists, teachers, politicians, advisors, public image advisors, they all analyze the art of reading emotions and responding to humans. It surprises me that when I travel through Argentina, while I'm on this current tour, I recognize that even in one country, you can find so many different ethnicities, different cultural heritages in the same country. Not only does the way of speaking change, food, diets, fauna, and flora, but also the personalities of the people are also different. I give the same conference across the country, and in certain places there are people that cry at a certain point, and others don't. Others stay still as if to say, well, explain the joke to me. There are people that I share something sad, and they laugh, or I share something funny, and they cry. So it doesn't have to do with me. It has to do with how each person processes the information before them. In fact, our lives are richer due to the diversity of people around us. Good thing we're not all the same. And if we try to obligate people to relating with us always in the same way, it would be very monotonous, very apathetic and tedious, right? And very often in our churches, no matter the religion, because this can happen in Catholicism and in amongst Protestants, I mix myself up with these big words. But we think that there's a one-size-fits-all, right? Like that rural doctor that prescribes the same medicine for each pathogen, from a rash to pneumonia. That was the village doctors. They always had the same remedy, so maybe sometimes out of mistake, we want to give the same spiritual food and the same dose as if it were a generic medicine to the whole world. Even if it were the case of using the same medicine, some tolerate capsules, others prefer syrup or injections, others prefer suppositories, because at least they won't see them. So, and they're different forms, the same medicine but in different forms, and different dosage, of course. But due to the fact that God made us all different, we're not identical in the way in which we grow spiritually, emotionally, in the way that we relate with God. Understanding this is a principle of wisdom that is vital, especially for a speaker or a preacher. Understanding that people are different. We're all distinct. And we're different amongst each other. And you don't have to feel guilty about that, right? We can relate to God in the way that we were designed and in the way that we were singularly wired, according to our engrams, according to our way of seeing life, according to our neurogenesis. We can relate to God in a unique, singular way. Now, let's agree that as we grow spiritually, physically, emotionally, we change. But we're always going to be ourselves in essence, even though it sounds like an oxymoron. We change, but we continue to be the same person. So, a fig seed can grow and become a huge fig tree, right? It'll change its form. It's no longer a seed, but it will never turn into a rose bush. It can become a healthy fig tree. It can be an atrophied fig tree, but it'll never be a pine tree. It'll never become an oak tree, for example. So this is important so that we can advance. God never created us to be a different person, another person. He designed our temperament, our gifts, our passions, our desires. And those that say, oh, well, but I feel like a failure. Well, because God put you in your mother's womb and let a cable loose, because that failure will bring to you a compensatory ability. I learned to reconcile with my shortcomings because that's what allows me to have development in other areas. Just like blind people who develop their sense of smell or their sense of hearing better than others, there are compensatory abilities that come after these shortcomings. Those defects from the factory. The truth is that our singularity is the product of God's design, and some believe that if we grow spiritually or if we mature, then we're going to become someone else or someone different, and we think or we say, I want to be like him or I want to be like her. But God never discards his raw material. He redirects his raw material. He recycles it. He reorients it, but he never discards it. Nor does he make humans in series. That's what Asians do, not God. So Psalm 103 says, He made us, He created us, and we are His. So we might change our form the way a fig tree changes its form, and we can become a fig tree. Yes, but we're never going to change in our essence. Our essence will always be that. What was formed in your home or lack of a home, what was formed in a functional home or in an orphanage, that is who we are. God knows it, because some believe the fallacy that when you come to God, boom, God makes you a new creation. And now you speak in a different way. You arrive like this, like, oh, I come here to serve the Lord, and then you change it to, oh, the Lord has changed my life. Even the voice changed, right? And they become the Terminator. No, that won't happen. Our essence remains. So, for example, if you were always a minimalist woman, simple, austere in the way you dress, then you're never going to be a fatal woman with red miniskirt, silver heels, black lipstick, and the life of the party. Unless you get hit by menopause, it's not going to happen. If you're an extroverted and talkative type, and you're tired of making mistakes over and over. I know people like this, people that always say a little bit too much and always create situations. Then don't expect for God to turn you into a reserved, sullen, shy, withdrawn person. No, you're going to continue getting involved in things you shouldn't, because that's your essence. So God designed us to be as we are. It seems childish, but man, do we forget it. God designed us to be as we are. So when our life ends, God will not ask us why we weren't like Moses or David or Esther, Beyonce or Kim Kardashian. God will ask us why we weren't ourselves. That original design. So when we grow to become the being that God wants us to become, then we are set free from the being that we try to appear to be. It seems like wordplay, but it makes sense. That image that God had of us from the moment we were in our mother's womb, when we start to be that, then we stop being the person we're pretending to be. That pretending, that hypocrisy, all those Instagram filters. So when young David was preparing for his battle with Goliath, King Saul gave him his armor because he said, young man, you can't fight on your own against that giant. It was a noble act. And so he said, why don't you just wear my armor? So it was an act of nobility to give him the armor of the king. And David tried walking with all that metal, and he said, no, I can't do this. Saul was size 56 XL, and David used size 36 small. Because Saul was a warrior, David was just a shepherd. Saul was a man. David was just a young boy, an adolescent, and David had to make a decision. And fortunately, he made the right one. David, with the slingshot, was a mortal enemy. With the armor, with Saul's armor, he was a bad copy of Saul. And so he decided that he wouldn't be Saul. He decided that he would continue to be David. What had helped Saul would be a burden for David in battle. And I ask, how many times in life do we try to manipulate other people's weapons? It might be, the fashion, the trend, snobism. It might be called, because everyone does it, or it's the tendency. And in spiritual terms, it's more serious than just a simple aesthetic fashion trend. No, it's worse when you imitate what others do, because you say, that's what brought them closer to God, so it'll bring me closer to God. Or we hear that someone prays for 1 hour at the start of the day. That would happen to me when I was young. I would read a book by David Cho who would say, I never wake up or go out to do my tasks without having prayed 1 hour by my bedside. What I would do is I would get out of my bed, kneel on the floor, and continue sleeping because I would just fall asleep. Or we see people that pray with a certain music, or they study, or they serve, and we feel guilty because we think, I have to do the same. And we get frustrated because what worked for others, other people's armor that gave them victories in battles, it might be totally useless to us. It's not our size. We don't fit. And we're going through life trying to walk with Saul's armor, but that's not who we are. The Bible says that we are his creation, his masterpiece, right? Don't forget this. We are his masterpiece. It's not poetic license from myself. No, the word says we are his creation. We are his masterpiece. So appliances are fabricated in mass, but masterpieces are made by an artist. And so as such, his plan to mold us and process us will not be like the plan that worked to mold others. Because others are more foolish than others. We are more foolish than others. Some understand through rigor, others understand by a whisper, others through deviations, others need a long desert, others need a short desert. God never, ever, ever uses a generic plan with all people. It's a fallacy to write a book with tips to be more spiritual, to get closer to God, because there is no generic plan that can work for everyone. What helps an orchid grow might dry out a cactus, or vice versa. What might feed a rat or a mouse would kill an elephant of hunger. So they all need air, light, and water, but in different doses and quantities and different conditions. Now imagine a father that says, it doesn't matter how many children I have, I'm going to treat them all exactly the same way. They're all going to be motivated by the same rewards. They'll be impacted by the same punishments and attracted by the same activities. No, it will not happen. You're going to give birth to a boy that loves soccer and another one that has no athletic bone in them. And you might say, but they both watch soccer from a young age. Yeah, but one liked it, one didn't. And so you can tell one, I'm going to take you to the game, and he'll jump for joy. And the other one will say, no, I don't want to go outside. They're different. So when we have children, we immediately become fully aware that each human being is different. And God knows it. God knows this. God knows what each one of us, what respects each of our emotional structure. Don't forget it. There are those that cry for anything. People that cry out because of soap operas. They wake up and they start crying. You ask, why are you crying? They say, just in case. And then there's those of us that you cannot even get a tear out of us, even with court order. And you might say, what a cold German. No, just different emotional structures, just different ways of processing. God knows this, and so he took Abraham on a trip. He made Elijah take a nap. He didn't make him pray. He said, eat, sleep, and rest, and then we'll talk. He made Joshua go around, and he reprimanded him. He made Adam learn a lesson the hard way. He gave Moses 40 years of a walk. He gave David a harp. He gave Paul a scroll and a feather. He argued with Elijah. He warned Cain. He comforted Hagar. He gave Aaron an altar. He gave Mary a song. He gave Gideon. He made Peter a new name. He gave Elijah a new mantle. Even Jesus was severe with the young rich man, tender with the adulterous woman, patient with the disciples that were worse than those here at River. ironic with the scribes, with the teachers, merciful with the thief on the cross, because he knew that each person had an emotional tank that was different to the next. There are those that are born with a large emotional tank. There are no poems that are enough. There are no words that are enough. There is no little heart that's enough for them. I have friends like this in Argentina. I say to them, look, your estrogen levels are very high because I cannot sustain you like this. Friends of mine, and they say, Dante, I notice you're a little distant. And I say, we spoke yesterday, and they say, yeah, but I sent you 2 messages and you didn't respond to me. Yeah, I'm a busy guy. It doesn't mean I stopped loving you. But these are people that are high maintenance. I understand them. They have a very strong emotional tank. And so the point is, God doesn't make 2 people grow in the same way, ever. God is an artisan, not a fabricator in mass. So God needed someone with wisdom to be able to deal with the hunger on the land, and he allowed Joseph's brothers to sell him into slavery in Egypt. He needed somebody to be at the head of all of Babylon, and so he brings them in as a Trojan, as a mole, and they take Daniel captive. He needed a transcultural missionary that could go past borders, speak Greek, be a Roman, and he processes Saul and turns him into Paul. We learn in different ways. We process life in different ways. All of us. We struggle with different sins and temptations. What might be a terrible battle for one, for a different person, it doesn't even make them stutter. We relate to God in diverse ways. You don't have to pray in the same way. You don't have to fast in the same way. Each person has a different way of relating to God, and you cannot underestimate how others relate to Him. So, trying to grow spiritually without taking into account who we are is like trying to raise children on an assembly line, saying, well, if it worked with the first one, it'll work with the last one. No, it will not work. They're different beings. I don't look like my brothers. My brothers don't look like me. Thank God. So, we have to get to know our temperaments, our learning style, how it is we process information, what our spiritual circuits are, and also get to know what season in life we're going through, because there are seasons where you're more like fertile ground. There's other seasons where you're closed off to things. You should know that it's not like that always. Maybe you're going through a winter or a fall or a spring. In spring, maybe I flourish more, and I'm speaking in metaphoric terms, of course. Right? You have to know what season you're living in. Discern the times, the way Saul would say. I'm speaking about temperament, which basically is, I say because this is a huge spectrum, but basically, if we're introverted or extroverted, those that listen closely, those that follow what's happening at River closely, you'll notice that I no longer tell people to greet those next to them. I used to do it before, but people began to say to me, oh, well, when we would greet people, somebody kissed me on the cheek and left their slobber all over me. There are people that love to greet like this, but there are others that are bothered by it. There are people that are bothered by having their personal space invaded, and I thought, if I go to a Broadway musical or I go to the theater, and at a certain point, King Midas comes out and says, greet the people around you. I'll be bothered because I don't want to greet the person that I don't know sitting next to me. So it seems like it's a lack of love, but it's what many people are thinking. I don't like to be greeted because sometimes you have somebody next to you that has their lips ready to kiss you. And so what did I do? I said, well, of course, there are extroverted people that like this, but they can greet everyone in the lobby or in the cafe, and there are introverts that say, no, I come here to receive. I don't like when they tell me, oh, hold the person's hand next to you, or tell the person next to them that they're handsome, or now tell the person next to you that they look good. And there are people that become exasperated by this, and I'm like this. Because I'm too introverted to tell a bearded guy, oh, you look so handsome. I'm sure of my orientation, but I feel weird telling the bearded man. And so some are extroverts, others are introverts, some prefer information, others prefer intuition. If we're thinkers, if we're sentimental, if we like orderly things, there are people whose lives are a mess. Different temperaments. Look, there is no temperament that's better or worse. Bless you. It's not that there is a temperament that's better than the other. It's not that there's a temperament that's more spiritual and there's one that's more carnal. No, God made us like this on purpose. Some temperaments desire order and routine, finishing tasks. There are people that love to go to our restrooms because they say, oh, they're clean, they always smell good, and the lobby is always orderly. If this is true, then I would assume that you like to separate time for prayer, make lists for who you're praying for. That makes you feel connected to God. I once met a woman, many years ago, an older woman, that could show you prayer lists that she had. And next to them, the answers to those prayers from years ago. I asked for this back in 72, and in 91, God answered it. Now, if you have a spontaneous temperament and you like improvisation, then your prayer life will never look like this. Your grandmother will you ever make lists. You don't make a list to go to Vaughn's or Albertsons, so what makes you think you're going to make a list to pray? And it's not that you don't love God, but it's just that it's tough for you to be linear. You like spontaneity. You like to go and just speak with God and say whatever you have to say. There are people that, for example, need to pray by bending their knees. If they don't bend their knees, they don't feel that they're praying, and it's fine. There are others that if they don't walk while they pray, they fall asleep. So they say, Lord Jesus, I ask you. And so what's my advice? Don't get on your knees. Oh, but it's not the right way to pray the way they once taught me. No, there is no one way. That's how we are in life. Look, there are people that, to try and assemble something, that furniture that we sometimes have to assemble at home, they read the instructions 7 times before they put peg A into hole B. They're the same ones that when they get on the plane, they look at their ticket that says 7A, and it will not change. If before you got on the plane it said 7A, it'll still say 7A once you're on. But they cannot remember a number. Have you seen? That they look up doesn't surprise me, but when they look down, that's what surprises me. It's not that it's going to say, that they're going to say, oh, it switched to 1B, I get to go to business class. No, it won't happen. But that is the person that before they put peg A into hole B, they read the instructions for an hour. Or I know people that read the instructions on shampoo. And there are people that hate reading instructions. And that's the other pole, that's the opposite. And the worst part is that they try to build a nuclear plant or make plutonium, and they don't even worry about reading the instructions. My dad was like this. My mom would say, read the instructions, and my dad would say, for what? What do you think, I'm an idiot? And we would throw out vacuums, things that were never assembled. My dad would take the car apart, and when he would put it back together, there were always spare parts, and my mom would say, well, don't you think that's necessary? And he would say, nah, that's just a spare part. They didn't know what else to do, so they put it in there. Until one day the car didn't run anymore. But these are people that learn better through trial and error, which is grandiose as long as they're not in charge of my parachute. That's why we have to reconcile ourselves with who we are. Instead of following the method of mass production, we have to seek out our own organic ways of growing and accepting immediately how God made us. And ergo, it also means that we have to be careful of not falling into the temptation of judging other people's personalities, other people's character, because we think that everyone's just like us, or that they should be. And for our own mental health, this is a great exercise that I've been doing for many years. I look at myself in the mirror every morning between flossing my teeth and brushing my teeth. Here's a tip that I'm going to give to you. You have to say, I am the weirdo. The world is not failed. For my own mental health, I came in defective. That makes you go out to life saying, I don't get what's happening, but it's okay because you told yourself that the problem lies with you, right? Because if not, we think that everyone else around us has a problem. And we're like the guy that is driving on the wrong side of the road and he hears on the radio, there's a crazy guy driving on the opposite side of the road. And he thinks to himself, well, he's crazy. It's not just one, it's thousands. And so for our own mental health, we have to understand that we are different. We cannot judge others or use ourselves as the model that everyone should follow to be the same. That's the great failure of the evangelical world. For example, since the evangelical world didn't expect someone like me, they constantly write to me, Dante, repent, go back to the old path. In reality, the old path goes back further than 3,000 years, which is love the Lord with all your mind, all your soul, love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's the old path. But they believe that the old path is their childhood church. And when they tell me, go back to the old path, they want me to walk down the same path that they do, which is the only one that they know. And it's the only one that they consider to be valid and holy. And that's where divisions and denominations come from. They say, this path, my path is the only one, not yours. How can it be that at River they don't have an altar? How can it be that they don't have a sacred pulpit? And so we say, Lord, I don't understand this person's personality, so it's better for you to consume them and send them to hell. Do it for me. Do it for me, Lord, so that I'm at ease. So no personality is superior to another. We're all different. Ephesians 2:10 says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. Workmanship, not mass production. No, workmanship. This week we put out a communication that we reprogrammed some tour dates in Argentina, and we said, due to logistic reasons, and it was true, due to technical and logistic reasons, separate from the artist, that's what the producer wrote. There's a protocol that when they postpone the dates and they say this is apart from the artist. If I suspend a show or an event on purpose, it's not outside of the artist's control. But if production suspends it because they don't have the screens and the sound ready, they say this is apart from the artist. It happened with Shakira a few weeks ago in Chile due to unforeseen reasons. So that's the protocol. You have no idea the issues that it caused on social media because of the word artist. Oh, but I thought that he was a pastor. I thought he was a man of God. Oh, an idol fell. Oh, thank God. Who placed me as an idol? Who said I wanted that? If I would have said, oh, for reasons separate from the drug dealer, then they wouldn't have risen up so much. Why do I not fear the word artist? Well, if I'm a sculptor, if I'm God's workmanship, I'm creation of the best artist, so I cannot avoid being an artist if an artist created me. You see? Now, in this world of cloned sheep and apostles, sometimes they call me an artist as an insult. Oh, finally, you recognize that you're an artist. Yeah, of course, because you see the majority of preachers and they all look the same. And if they don't look the same, then they end up looking the same. They speak the same, they dress the same, they pray the same, and the majority of believers also look the same. They all look like they're part of the same band. They all look like they're in the Jackson 5. They're all dressed the same. And so they give up their exclusivity to become part of the herd. And I say, why do they give up their exclusivity? Who tells them that they all have to dress the same and look the same? That's why I always celebrate, and I truly celebrate, that River is made up of irrational, incoherent, crazy, extravagant people. They're all eccentric. That's the applause that this diverse army deserves. I love it that here there is no one-size-fits-all. That's what makes it so passionate, so fun. Now let's agree that I'm only mentioning a few personalities as far as how we relate to God. There are so many more. In psychology, there are many personalities that have been studied. I'm just talking about some in respects to how we relate to God. And I insist, the secret or one of them, is avoiding the temptation of judging someone else's emotional structure, saying, oh, he's cold, oh, he's not moved, oh, you see how she exaggerates. It's very easy to assume an air of superiority, an air of petulance, or to say, oh, how can that person not come and serve in all 18 services that we have during the week? Oh, why does she not come and pray at 4 a.m. when it's so great? There are people that love to sleep in. I don't understand how they can get tired of worshiping God. It's only been 5 hours that we've been standing on our feet. It angers me that they sit down halfway through the service. There are people that judge that. Oh, they sat down. Oh, so they're carnal. Maybe they sat down because they're heavy or their feet hurt. I don't know. You might forget it, but God made us this way. He made us different, antagonistic to each other. So we have to be united. That's the Lord's commandment. Not uniform. Uniformity, hegemony, has nothing to do with unity. In my Father's home, there are many rooms, the Lord said. In my Father's home, there are many rooms. And so it's the same roof, but with different rooms. Same roof, different rooms, different living rooms, different spaces. I'm quickly going to give you some practical examples of personalities, and you can check off which one applies to you. I hope none of you check off every box. You might be a part of those that grow intellectually. Of course, we all have a little bit of everything. It's true, but there is a bias. There's almost like an inclination to a certain way of being in particular, and then speckled by the others. But maybe you might be a person that grows intellectually. So the word theology brings the same impact that a pupusa with bean, cheese, and pork brings to you. Or if you have good taste, an Argentinian barbecue. And so you like to learn, and when you come to church, you bear and tolerate the musical numbers. You like it, but your strength is the message. The praise is nice, but it's all about the message. And when you face a personal crisis, you tend to become analytic. You try to solve the problem. You reason everything, because everything goes through here. Moses said in his central commandment that the Lord's people should love Him with their hearts, their soul, and their strength. And when Jesus recites this information, he adds a phrase and says, with your heart, with your being, with your strength, and with your mind. He adds the mind. And so if you're an intellectual, you're very happy with this addition from Jesus, because the way to your heart, the immigration lane to your heart, passes through your head. If they can't go through your head first, they don't reach your heart. But there are people that you can reach them directly at their heart. There are people that are more emotional, people that say, but then there are people that say, I want to understand. If you're like this, then you don't go to congregations that are pure emotion, just shouting. You don't tolerate that a preacher insults your intelligence, that he speaks to you as if you were mentally retarded, making you repeat phrases all the time, or that he treats you like a kindergartner. You don't like that. So you need to not be insulted intellectually. You need to be submerged in teachings. And so as your mind grows, you feel alive. If not, you feel stagnant. Is that good? Yes, it's good. Now, what's the danger with this personality? You may be all brains and no heart, and that's wrong. The danger is becoming a condemner of those that don't think as much. The Apostle Paul said, knowledge makes you vain, but love makes you grow. There are people that need all sorts of messages. There are people that need a message from Maldonado, a message from Marcos Huy, a message from Danilo Montero, people that listen to Dante, different emotional structures. And you might ask, well, how can they listen to that person? Well, that's what reaches them. They're wired to listen to that type of message. Maybe you're not an intellect. Maybe you're a man or woman of relationships. If you're like this, and you always like to be around people, you're mourning, oh, why did they take away the greeting? I liked to be kissed. If you're like this, then I already prophesied you belong to about 30 WhatsApp groups, and you're adding one more each day. those that have the same pets as you, those that have the same types of kids as you, those that share the same type of mother-in-law. You're part of all these groups, right? And sometimes you feel guilty when you hear that others spend long hours in loneliness with the Lord, because to you, loneliness is unknown. The most special moments in your life have to do with the context of relationships. You like parties, you like being around people, you like to be surrounded by noise. If there is no noise, you get depressed. Those that tend to have this personality are not carnal. They just hear God more in a conversation than if they were to read a book. And so they gather with a friend and they're speaking, and in that conversation they feel that they received the encouragement that they needed. Oh, how great when my friend said this to me, because you need to relate yourself and receive in that way. But there's also a danger with it, which is getting to the point where you're always depending on people, and being alone with God is going to require a greater effort from you. Since God knows that that can't always be your personality and you also need the others, then loneliness will be tough for you, because some people don't like to be alone. Maybe you're not intellectual or relational, but you're a worshiper all day. The psalmist David wrote, I rejoice when they say to me, we will go to the house of the Lord. If you're like this, then when you worship at church, you would hope that the worship would last hours and hours and hours. Because Drew, why did Drew fall? Why didn't she continue to sing? The people that worship like this. And you go to Disney, you come back, you go to Universal, you come back, and that person's still worshiping. And it's not wrong. But while the intellectuals are looking at their watches, waiting for the message to start, you're saying, oh no, please repeat the song just 100 times more. There are people that love it, they love it, and there are churches for that. There are churches for that. There are churches where they sing and they sing and they sing and they sing, and there is no sequence, there is no script. I'm not saying that we have the model to follow. No, we're all different. But there are churches where a guy comes up with a guitar and he sings. I love you. You come back an hour and a half later, and he's still, I love you. And people love it. Because they're worshipers. King David possibly had this personality. He composed psalms. He expressed himself through music. We're told that he danced for the Lord, and with such exuberance and vehemence that he was left in his underwear in the process. Maybe you won't want to, imitate this because you're conservative, but if you're like this, surely you sing out loud at red lights. Asians look over at you as if to say, what's going on with this person? I may crash into them. A danger of being like this is those that are not as expressive externally, we criticize them. Oh, but that person never worships. I never see them raise their hands. Some have traditions or cultures where no one lifts a finger, much less a hand. Not everyone dances. Not everyone has the gift of Shakira. Some of us are children of English and Germans. Some of us are, my hips are I'm like a robot. I want to dance today. So be careful to base your spirituality on the emotions. There are people that love to shout because they take for granted that by shouting they're given power, fire, flavor, vehemence, ardor. Now what's the danger? The fact that music affects our emotions, we can become too dependent on music and noise for it to just produce a certain emotional answer, and that's also wrong. What I'm trying to show is that there is not the correct spiritual personality. There is none. You might have to spend time worshiping God without music so that your worship is based on who God is and not on the emotions of the noise. So everything has its pros and cons. So you may not be an intellect or relational. You may not be a great worshiper, but you might like to meditate. There are people that love to meditate. They were born as Tibetan monks. It's very likely that when you were younger, your parents would say, go play with other kids. Because reflection bursts out from within you. You're an observer of life. What happens when an individual that likes to meditate meets an extrovert? They get married. It's that ridiculous myth that polar opposites attract. And after a few years, they drive each other crazy because they say that what attracts you about that person is what later on will make you want to divorce them. And so the meditator says, oh, this woman has no depth. All she likes to do is talk on the phone all day. And she says, oh, he doesn't care about people. All he wants to do is spend all day looking at his belly button and watching Netflix. Yeah, but it's what you signed up for. There's a difference between the activist and the meditator. When someone's active, they say, I'll call you this week, I'll call you. That means I'm going to call you as soon as I get home. If you don't answer me quickly, I'm going to leave you 153 text messages, 89 voicemails. If you see my message, then I'm going to your home. I'm going to boil your rabbit in a pot and eat him for lunch. When a meditator says, I'll call you this week, that means that they're going to call you before they die. They'll most likely call you before they get disconnected from the respirator. So you may not be an intellect or a relational or a worshiper, but maybe you're a server. You have ants in your body. You feel ants all over. These are the people that grow by doing. There's a great majority of these people in churches. To you, 1 hour of doing something is worth more than 10 hours of listening to sermons or worshiping. And you feel uncomfortable in a place where you can't do anything. If you can do something, you feel that you're being validated. Going to missions, preparing coffee, helping, decorating, you feel that God delights in your personality. Those that have this personality and for a time cannot serve, maybe due to illness or disability or a pandemic, they feel like they're dying. They feel like God has discarded them. A danger for these people is that they feel that God is not present when they're not doing something. And the danger that the risk that they run is falling into the temptation as well of judging or feeling resentful against those that are not like them. To say, well, why don't they serve? I don't understand how they don't like to serve. And this is the nucleus of the message. Jesus, on a certain occasion, is with Martha and her sister Mary. Surely you've heard the story. In Luke 10:28, it's very well known. Mary sits down at Jesus' feet. Jesus comes into the home, and Mary sits down to learn from him. She says, I have a unique opportunity. Jesus never visits us. This doesn't happen every day, at least not in this way. Martha goes to the kitchen, and she complains that she doesn't receive any help. It's a well-known story. Both are under the same roof in different rooms. Mary's in the living room, Martha's in the kitchen, okay? Same roof, different rooms. Martha doesn't have proximity. Or let's say Martha has proximity, Mary has intimacy. If you're a multitasking individual, someone that likes to serve, then Martha is your holy boss, Saint Martha. Because what she is doing, she's trying to get the food ready, she's trying to clean the home, she's trying to tell others what they should do. You say, that's how you should live life. Is there a different way to do life? If you're the type of personality like Martha, right now you're listening to this sermon at home on your cell phone, and you're replying to text messages, you're looking at the comments on YouTube, or most likely, you're watching this message while you're preparing a coffee, while you're walking your dog, washing clothes, you're saying, I can do a lot of things and pay attention. That's your idea. I confess that was my idea many times. I've come here to preach every Sunday for the last 16 years. I'm not saying it to boast, because for me, it's my way of feeling, not validation, but that I'm doing it properly, that I'm doing it right. I've preached here for 1,000 sermons with kidney stones, a fever, with even an allergic reaction in the face like last Sunday. I could have stayed home. I came here. I had to deal with a bunch of people that don't know me saying, oh, he got operations. He had Botox. Oh, Dante, vanity got to you. Why did you get that surgery? It didn't occur to anyone that I had an allergic reaction. Your grandma, I'm going to operate on the face that God gave me. Tu abuela. But I cannot say, I'm staying home because I don't feel good. No. Oh, that's an example of a preacher. No, that's just my personality. If I don't have a plan B, I can't say, oh, well, today I won't feed anyone, I won't preach to anyone because today I have kidney stones, because today I have a fever. I try. If I can stay standing for an hour, whatever, the problem is in my face or somewhere else, things that you guys haven't seen, I do my best. But there's also an error in believing that God's presence demands that we stop doing things. It's as if God doesn't care about what we do. I've heard this a whole lot, and that's the polar opposite of what I'm saying. Many times I've heard people say that it's better to sit down in a calm way in the living room than to work with intensity in the kitchen. And those that are like this, those that are like Mary, rejoice and say, oh, see, take that, take that. Take that, Mary. But there's a problem with this. There are places in the Bible where Jesus speaks a lot about serving. There are many stories about workers. Those that work hard receive praise, and those that are passive are called bad and lazy. So it's not that God is saying that you have to be like Mary. Many times I've heard this. It's no good to be in the kitchen. Sit down at the feet. What do we do with the story of a parent that tells his two children, this is Jesus' story, go and work in the vineyard. And the bohemian hippie kid said, I don't want to work. Working is doing. I prefer to be. He didn't do so well in the story. In fact, Jesus said of himself, my food is to do the work that I was sent to do and to finish the task. He also asks us to go and send workers. So the last thing he said to his most intimate friends is that they choose their path, go around the world, make disciples, and to teach everything that he sent them to teach. And so if the idea of the narrative of Martha and Mary is to show Mary as the way to love God, to just sit at his feet, why would Jesus give his followers so many tasks? What's left for a mother with so many young children? In that season where calm, meditation, peace is basic Chinese. You don't know what it means. You don't know what calm means because sometimes you have a little ladder of children. All the mothers that have to go to the bathroom with the door half open because they're afraid that if they close the door, then their baby can fall on their head. They don't even have a single minute to rest. If grandma doesn't come over or the mother-in-law comes over to replace them for a second, what's left for them? How does that woman meditate? Do you really think a mother with young children is condemned to being less spiritual because she can't take the luxury of going to a mountain to pray for a week? That's something that always frustrated me. I would read that some would go to a mountain for 40 days to pray. And I would say, if I go and do that, then I won't have anything to eat. What do you mean? I would hear people say, oh, I took a sabbatical. Yeah, but if I would take a sabbatical, who would pay my rent? So let's go a little bit deeper into the story of Martha and Mary, because in reality, it's not about personalities. At the beginning of the story, Luke says that Martha received them in her house. They received Jesus, both girls, both women. The implication is that he would spend the night there. Providing hospitality in ancient Middle East was very cultural. There were no hotels. Travelers depended on private homes, and so Jesus is willing to be received in a home where the head of the family is a single woman named Martha. The family includes another single woman, her sister named Mary. We tend to skip over these details, but this would be impactful for any reader back then and even now. Imagine if there had been social media and Jesus takes a picture with both single women in the living room. Oh, imagine the gossipers in the church. They would have ripped him to shreds. It's conduct without precedence for a rabbi. And this conduct is even more complicated in Luke's story when it says that Mary sat at the feet of the Lord. Because this isn't just a description of where she was in the room. This doesn't mean that Jesus didn't want Mary to do anything for the rest of her life except remain seated. To sit at someone's feet is an expression from the past to indicate the relationship between a disciple and a rabbi. When Paul described his credentials to a crowd, a Jewish crowd in Jerusalem, he said, I'm a Jew, born in Tarsus of Sicily, but I was instructed at the feet of Gamaliel. It was very important to note at whose feet you had been instructed. And so a disciple was someone that would choose his rabbi at all times to learn whatever they could from them, not in a sermon, but how they lived. Disciples tried to follow their rabbis all the time, not just during the formal lessons. They wanted to see how the rabbi managed money, how they related to the opposite sex. They wanted to know how they would eat, what their diets were, when they would do their tasks. They would even follow them when they would go to the restroom. They would stay right outside the door because they were worried that in the bathroom they would say a prayer that they couldn't hear. You know what? I'm not a rabbi. Don't follow me to the bathroom. But all activity was an opportunity to learn from the rabbi. So I can be seated at Jesus' feet when I'm in prayer on my knees, when I'm driving my car, when I'm negotiating a contract, when I'm recording for a TV, radio, flying, watching a movie. That's the illustration that Mary shows, that you don't have to put yourself on pause or turn yourself off. All that it requires is that I ask to follow the teacher all the time, and whatever it is I'm doing, I don't leave the teacher aside until the weekend, but that he can live with me all 7 days in whatever it is I'm doing. That was the decision that Mary took. Jesus said, only one thing is necessary, and that thing was chosen by Mary, and no one can take that from her. That one thing is that she wasn't going to spend the rest of her life sitting there contemplating. The thing is that she would be with Jesus all the time. It didn't matter the highs and lows, the misfortunes and the tragedies around her. She would be living with Jesus. Do I explain myself? Do you get it? And so the decision of being a disciple is to always be with Jesus. And there's another detail that we ignore, but no one from the first century would have skipped over this. How many rabbis out of all of history had a woman disciple? Zero. No rabbi, at least a respectable one, would allow a woman to get close enough to him, much less close to his feet. And so in a scandalous way, Jesus put God's presence, made it available to whoever was singing it. Man, woman, young, old, villager, king. Meanwhile, Martha's in the kitchen. Same roof, different rooms. And Martha was overwhelmed by all the preparations. It doesn't say in Luke that she was trying to do a whole lot. The implication is that Martha also wanted to be with Jesus, but she said, someone has to cook. The initial intention is I do too. I would love to sit at his feet, but I have to provide hospitality. The question is, who said that she had to provide this high level of hospitality, this quality hospitality? Maybe it was her own culture. Maybe she self-imposed it. Maybe it was the stereotypical role of women back then. Or maybe the voice of her mother in her ear saying, never let anyone see you as lazy. She's in the kitchen. She doesn't have to be there. Jesus doesn't want her to be there, but she's there. Martha is sure that after exchanging a few courtesies with Jesus, Mary would come into the kitchen to help her clean. But Mary doesn't appear. Mary says, no, I'm going to be able to wash dishes my whole life. But Jesus comes to our home once. So Martha goes through what I call the residual effect. We all know how it works. Imagine that you're washing dishes after a party. Your husband is sitting on the couch, watching TV in a catatonic state. In other words, in his classic mental coma state. At first, it doesn't bother you, even though you have a stack of plates to get through. When he sees how many tasks you have, you think, oh, he's going to come give me a hand. And he says, oh, finally the visitors left. And you begin to get upset. The angrier you get, my mother would get upset. She would sweep and say, one day I'm going to leave and the lice will eat you up. Nobody was fighting with her. She would just throw bombs like Putin on whoever it would fall on. And I would say, Dad, what's happening? And he would say, I don't know. So she would make a whole lot of noise with the dishes and the utensils. Maybe she would drop a cup on the ground on purpose and it would break. And my dad would look up from the TV and say, hey, did something break? Hey, bring me a beer when you can. And so you slam the cabinets. And my dad puts up the volume on the TV to be able to hear it. You wanted the person to feel guilty, to learn your work ethic. But if your husband has a high threshold for guilt, The only thing that you accomplished was a whole lot of noise and a crazy woman breaking dishes. Martha's making a whole lot of noise with the plates at this point. But Mary, there's in another planet. You know what's going through Martha's brain? Of course, the teacher is here. The man that always teaches about serving. And look who's serving. Look who's serving. Oh, look at me, the servant. Look at me, the servant. Oh, you have to serve. And here I am, all alone serving. Tired of always doing all the work. Oh, yes, of course. Pharaoh set the slaves free. I'm sorry. He forgot about one. He forgot about the stupid woman who's still a slave. But this isn't what bothers Martha the most. Mary is doing something that no woman should ever do. No other rabbi has a woman disciple. What is this crazy girl doing? She's at his feet. She's at his feet. Now she just has to grab his toes. What's going to happen with our reputation? Our reputation. Who's going to want to marry one of us if people find out about this? They're going to say that we're two crazy girls in heat. Doesn't Mary know that a woman's place is in the kitchen? Until finally Martha can't take it anymore. She's sure that she's right until she doesn't go directly to Mary. She doesn't even refer to Mary by name. She says, Lord, doesn't it matter to you that my sister has left me serving all alone? Tell her to help me. Tell her to move her butt. Martha isn't just criticizing Mary. She doesn't feel very happy with Jesus either. She's pressuring him, saying, if you're compassionate, if you have a bit of the Father's discernment, then realize who's working here and who is just scratching themselves in this home. And Jesus says, Martha, Martha, twice. When Jesus says your name twice, remember I once told you that in a market, there was a kid who was Judas reincarnate, and his father would say, Matthew, Matthew, have peace, Matthew. And the kid would knock everything down. He would shout. He would throw fits. Matthew, Matthew, be calm. And a woman said, I admire your patience. And he said, no, I'm Matthew. He was about to kill him. When Jesus says your name twice, you're messing up. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked for you to shake you up. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? I can imagine that Jesus says the name with a certain affection to then be able to bring a diagnosis. And he says, Martha, only one thing is necessary. I didn't ask you to prepare pupusas or for you to prepare burritos. No, we can ask for delivery. We'll have some Argentinian barbecue. You know, Jesus knew what good food was. He was Jesus, of course. And so sometimes sitting at the feet of Jesus doesn't mean that, or better said, sometimes you have to stop doing what we're doing, and start doing something else. Maybe we're at the point of exhaustion, and sitting at Jesus' feet means, all right, I'm going to trust. Sometimes God even sends us to sleep, to rest like Elijah. But by general rule of thumb, it doesn't mean to stop your activities forever. All we have to do is be with him at all times, whether we're in the kitchen or the living room. Continue to be in the kitchen if that's your personality. But don't stay in a room that's different to the room that Jesus is in. It doesn't matter what room we're in. If we're under the same roof, Martha wasn't doing anything wrong. She wasn't breaking any of the commandments or gossiping or spending hours watching a Turkish soap opera. Martha? Come on, what's going on? Martha wasn't sinning. She was working. It's just that she wasn't with Jesus. And a detail that's not minor, Martha is a follower of Jesus. She's not a challenger or a Pharisee filled with hate and what was within her burst out. No, she was not rebellious. Martha invited Jesus to her home. It's just that she's distracted. She's fed up. She's irate, furious in the same home, but in a different room. And Jesus says, Mary chose the best thing to be in the same room as me. So, in many seasons of our lives, we invite Jesus to come into our home under our roof, but we go into a different room. It's as if, yeah, I have Jesus, but over there. When we used to have the wooden cross in the home, or the idol, it's not that we reject God. No, we have good intentions. It's just that we're overwhelmed. Same home, different rooms. And we worry, we get stressed out, as if we had control over something. We haven't learned the art of letting go. And letting go isn't passivity, huh? Sitting down at the feet of Jesus doesn't mean, oh, let's wait until life passes us by. No, that's why it means that we have to recognize that God is present and that we don't have to control the entire universe around us. And in fact, we cannot. Sometimes I tend to be in the same home as Jesus, but always in a different room. And I don't know why it happens to me sometimes. Same roof, but different rooms. What's more, let me share with you. At a certain point in my life, I would come to a service here at River, and I continued to worry while I preached. Worried about something that I left down there before I came up. Maybe a situation or a problem or in Argentina or wherever. And I was left altered in the kitchen or in a different room instead of sitting with all of you at the feet of the one who loves me. Incredible. We can be under the same roof but in a different room now. Only during very few moments can we be like Mary, in front of a chimney in pajamas, reading the Bible, writing a devotional, meditating. It'll happen. We can look for these moments intentionally, but the majority of our lives we spend in the kitchen. We're hardworking people, and it's fine. Our kitchen can be the office, our cubicle, the factory plant, the classroom, the home where we take care of children. In fact, even the church where we serve as volunteers. The kitchen is that place in our society where we worry, we fret, but what if we decided to sit at the feet of Jesus in the kitchen? While we're stuck in traffic, taking advantage of the moment, at work, mentally, without getting distracted, what if we were to sing while we made salad? In fact, let me tell you something that didn't occur to Martha. If he had asked Jesus to go into the kitchen, hey, Mary, Jesus, I have some things here to do. Can't you sit in the kitchen with me? The three of them could have conversed while one stirred the pot so that the noodles wouldn't harden, but it didn't occur to her. She thought that she had to go to the living room. But if you invite Jesus to get into our truck, to get onto our boat before we start fishing, he'll do it. That's the nature of being a believer. You don't have to go to the church to be able to connect with God or lock yourself in to speak with him. That all comes later, but now the important thing is to live each day at a time. But for now, let's celebrate that we're with Jesus under the same roof, and for the love of God, I hope that today we are all in the same room as him. Give an applause to the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. No. Someone needs to celebrate more than that. Give a grand applause to the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. Let's go. The King is in the house. Is the King in the house? Yes or no? I love it. But the good thing in all this is that if he is in the house, then you almost feel like saying, well, what room is he in? And then you go into that room. It's a metaphor, of course, but this goes for those that have come here many times and were able to disconnect a little bit for a few hours, but then you picked up your worries again and continued on with your life. Why? We have to take advantage of being able to say, I want to leave my worries here. And then our cleaning crew, as we did last Sunday, when we left our stones here, our stones of judgment, this Sunday our cleaning crew will come along and throw out all the worries, all the burdens, all the unnecessary weight that we leave here on this floor. But let's travel lightly, people. Let's learn to bring Jesus into our lives. I had to do this. Because sometimes I can arbitrarily separate myself. I can separate myself for a little while to be alone with God. But when I can't, when the tour is intense and I get off a plane and I get on another and I go to a hotel and I eat late at night and I go to bed late, sometimes what I feel from God is Him saying to me, just sleep, just rest. We'll speak tomorrow. When? Well, on the plane. When you're in the car, when you're in line, while you shower. And so I've learned that I can invite Jesus into my kitchen. Mothers that are spending their time in the kitchen right now, mothers with young children, people that have 2-3 jobs, to be able to put food on the table and you don't have time to take a sabbatical. Well, invite Jesus to be with you at your 3 jobs or on the truck. Turn off the news and speak with Him. He won't ask you to get on your knees or enter into a trance. Just say, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. And He said, all those that are tired and weary, come to me and I will give you rest. Religion is what gives you burdens, not Jesus. It is the fossilized and organized religion that puts burdens on your shoulders, that you have to come to the service, they have to do this and that and the other, and you can't miss out. The pastor will call you and a leader will communicate with you on the phone and they'll send you mail. That's religion. The Lord doesn't follow up. He's not the FBI. The Lord is always calling you to follow Him. And you say, how can I follow you if I'm working? He says, follow me while you work, while you cut the grass, while you design the plans, while you plan whatever it is you're planning. Are we willing to bring the Lord onto the dynamic of our lives? Invite Him into the kitchen? How great! Let's pray to God. Father, I've spoken what I believe You told me to say to this marvelous army, to your children. If you can place your hand on your heart, I would love for you to do so, because I've foolishly spoken to your intellect, and that's as far as I can reach. But I know the Lord has spoken there, to those beats in your heart, deep. The Lord loves you so much. He loves you so much. He loves you so much that He brings you words like these. Don't be overwhelmed. Choose one thing. I want to be with You. Bring Him along to your studies, to your university. Take Him in the car, on the train, on the bus, on the truck. Say to Him, Lord, come into my kitchen. There are moments where I can come into the living room with You, but join me in my overwhelming busy life. That's what it's about. It surprises me when some say, now what do I have to do now that I belong to religion? Well, I have no idea, no clue. I've never preached religion. What I know is that you could invite Jesus into your life, and your children will give thanks for that, and your spouse and your parents and those that surround you. Thank You, Lord. Thank you. Father, thank You for this morning. Thank You because I've transmitted what I believe You told me to say. Thank You for the respect and silence that my brothers have given me. Thank You, Lord, for Your atmosphere, for Your presence. Thank You because we are so different. And that makes us so attractive. Thank You, God, for those that cry, for those that don't, for those that shake, for those that have never felt anything, for those that are sentimental, for those that are more sensitive, for those that are a little tougher, for those that have Asperger's syndrome like this servant, for those that have other loose wires, for those that see life in a divergent way, for those that reason, for those that don't reason, for those that think, for those that pass everything through the filter of their hearts, for those that incite, for those that are intuitive. Thank You for all these eclectic people. Thank You because we are all so different, and that shows us that Your love is unique, that Your love unites us, that Your love joins us into one spirit, even though we'll never be the same in essence. Father, thank You for River. Thank You for those that listen at home. Thank You for so much blessing. I bless You. I bless those that are watching now. I bless those that are at home, those that are receiving Christ for the first time. For those that say, Lord, come into my life. But come into my life isn't a magical prayer. It's not a formula. It's not a cliche. It's come into my life. Literally, I want to share the rest of my life with You. Lord, I bless children, youth, adults, and the elderly, in the body, in the soul, and in the spirit. Amen, amen, and amen. Be blessed.